Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Varanus Vault on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. Just make sure Parker's with us.
Sorry,
I thought I lost you there, mate.
Nope, I was just turning on lights. Sorry.
No, you're all good, mate. We'll just wait for a few more people to join.
Cool.
Hi, Paul. How's it going, mate? Nice for tuning in.
Paul, what's up, brother? Sweet. The man, Paul. Paul was the day one supporter. Paul started.
Oh, yeah?
Paul had me on his podcast. Paul was the first podcast I ever did, and this was back when I only had I had one blue tree, a pair of blacks, and a pair of yellows. I think that's it. And I had iguanas and stuff. And
Nice.
yeah, I only had 300 followers on Instagram, and Paul reached out. It's like, hey man, want to do a podcast?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, he needs to bring his podcast back. He hasn't done it for a little while.
So I know. Yeah. I miss watching it. Great podcast.
Yeah, it's nice to have some representation from the UK.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Let's get on with it, Parker. You've been on the Trap Talk Reptile Network a few times, but for anyone that hasn't seen you before and obviously haven't seen you on the Varanus Vault, do you want to just introduce yourself and then what got you into monitors?
Yeah, so I'm Parker, or my business name is Parker's Park, or my Instagram handle as well. And I work with mainly tree monitors. I also work with lace monitors. You can barely see my male's nose poking up right there. He's waking up. That's not normally how his enclosure looks. I had some issues. I guess I didn't secure his basking spot the best, and he already ripped it all down. So that's not normally how it's supposed to look, but it's under renovations. But yeah, so I also have lace monitors, but primarily tree monitors is what I work with. And I first got into monitors. Let's see, I got my first tree monitor at a reptile show here in America, in Arizona. And it was a female black tree. She was wild caught. And I had seen lots of videos. I'd watched tons of videos online. And I remember specifically, actually, I watched Brian Barczyk's videos on green tree monitors. And I was like, oh, man, these are incredible. And then I found out there's a variety of different colors, and I was immediately sold. But at the time, I had no idea you could even go to some reptile show locally and find a tree monitor. And I mean, even at the time, that was really rare that I even happened to find one there. But as soon as I saw her, I was like, okay, I have to get that. I have to get the tree monitor. And yeah, ever since then, I just fell in love with them, kept getting more and more. And now here we are. I think I just did an official count yesterday, and just including the ones that I'm keeping, not like the babies that I have for sale, just the ones that are personally mine. I've got, I think, 33 now. So nothing compared to what you guys have got up there in Indonesia, but yeah, it's
that's good. That's a good size, especially a bit like we were saying earlier in America and the UK and other places where you got to pay extortionate rates for electricity and all the rest of it. That's a really good size collection. What year was that when you got your first tree monitor?
2020. It was about halfway through 2020, in the middle of COVID, when everything was all locked down. I was stuck at home. I was like, oh, this is, or well, actually, no, sorry, backtracked. My bad. I got it right before, I think it was 2019. It was November, because that's when the reptile show normally is. My bad. I just remembered that. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it was canceled that next year due to COVID. But yeah. So it's been a little over, well, no, about 5 years now. A little over 5 years.
Yeah, that is 33 as well, for sure.
Yeah, good amount of those are babies. I've kind of kept back a lot of babies. I've got, let's see, I held back all 4 Bomei that I've produced so far. I have 2 yellows, 2 blues, 1 cordensis, and those are all the babies I held back. Got a couple more still here. I've still got 2 cordensis and 1 yellow that are available if anybody's looking for some hand tame tree monitors. Hit me up.
Definitely. Hi Dan, thanks for tuning in. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So yeah, you got them just in COVID. So the prices were skyrocketing just then. There seems to be a big influx in the tree monitors just around COVID. Things started
Yep.
going a bit crazy.
Yep, I remember actually I got my female black tree for $800 at that show, and I remember that was like kind of expensive for them at the time. At that time, I remember looking into them. The blues were, I think, the most expensive. Well, honestly, at the time, I don't even think I really knew about cordensis, and I definitely didn't know about golden spotted tree monitors. I didn't find out about golden spotted tree monitors, I think, until like a year later or so. But
they were pretty unheard of them. So.
Yeah, even just a few years ago, they were like non-existent. But yeah, I think blues were the most expensive, and I think they like maxed out at like $1,800, and there was very few people producing them. I think that was even because then it was really once Brian. At least this is how I remember it. I remember once I started seeing Brian Susan producing them. That's when I started seeing prices go up, which I was like, oh, I was happy about that. Which was well,
sure.
I just always thought that they deserved to be higher. When I first got into tree monitors, I remember at that Reptile show. There's a friend of mine here who, he used to own a reptile store here. It recently closed actually, but his name's James Badman, and I remember I was talking to him about if I should get that tree monitor or not, and he specifically told me, he was like, "You absolutely should, because I guarantee you in the next few years, tree monitor prices are about to skyrocket. They're going to be the next big thing." And I was like, I think they should be. I was like, I see why. I mean, I saw one video and I can't stop thinking about them. I have to get one.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then I ended up getting her at that show and never looked back since. I still have that. That's still the same female black tree that I still have this day. She's pretty old. I think she'll still lay some clutches for me, but they're probably just going to be far in view. She's laid 2 clutches for me so far, but it's like been once a year, and I haven't gotten any eggs out of her in a little over a year now. I think she's probably, so when I got her, she was definitely like well into adulthood, and it's been over 5 years now. So, I mean, I think she's probably, if I'm lucky, she's probably around 9 or 10. I mean, she's decently old, but I mean, I've heard of females laying up until they're like 16 to 18. And I mean, she's in great health. One of the main things, I feel like it's something with the way they start shedding. I see it with my male blue too. My male blue is this guy. I didn't even notice him. My male blue is also, I think he's around 8 years old. He's another wildcat, so I'm not for certain, but he's been in captivity for at least 6 years, because I got him from someone that had him for a few years before I got him. And it's same thing with him, where it's not like they get a bunch of stuck shed. It just takes them a lot longer to shed than the others, I would say. But
they just
it's also kind of, sorry, go ahead.
No, they just start looking old. Yeah, when they sort of get around sort of 10. I've got a pair of black trees in the UK. They're 10. They're still producing clutches. I'm trying to sell them, because obviously I'm living in Indonesia now. And then the amount of people that are worried about buying 10-year-old lizards, like, they can easily go 15, maybe 20 years and still produce clutches.
Sure.
And she produced, at one point, she was producing when I was at home, like a clutch every 2 months. I think it was insane. Like, you couldn't stop her.
Wow.
And like, so they can definitely do it. And like I said, she's at least, when she was doing that, she was at least 9. So
gotcha.
They can keep going for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she could be older than 10 even. Like, she could be up to, I mean, I could have gotten her when she was 6 or 7, 8. I'm not for sure, but either way, I do think the male definitely still shows so much interest in her. It's almost irritating, because it's like, it's become almost like every other week there will be a day where he's just trying to pin her down, chasing her around. And it's like, none of my other pairs do that unless they're getting ready to breed and the female's getting into a cycle. Like, even if I see the male chasing her around, it's like, okay, maybe they didn't lock that day. Typically, like, within 10 days later, they have eventually locked. But with the black trees, they locked one time. She laid, so the first clutch she laid, it was before I had the male. She dropped just 3 dud eggs. Actually, it was 2. Sorry. The second clutch was 3. And the second clutch they did lock, but she scattered them around the enclosure. There was one that I think could have been good, but I have automated misters, and I should have turned them off. But I have cameras too. So I was watching the cameras, and I was like, oh no, if she lays them and it's close to when the mister is about to turn on, I'll just get there and get them out in time. But she literally dropped it. I watched her on the camera from my house, like poop it out from the top of the enclosure, and she started like 5 minutes before the mister kicked off. So I was like rushing over there. I'm like, no, stop. And she ended up laying it, and it got blasted with the mister. And I tried cleaning it all off, but it was a lost cause, unfortunately. So still working on the Bakari, but hopefully this year.
Yeah, I remember you posting that on Instagram or something. I remember that. I miss having camera. I had cameras and all my ones in the UK, and you see so much activity in like egg laying and stuff. I miss loads of it. Obviously now I'm working with so many, I do miss those days of just being able to get my phone out and just have a look, see what the tree monitors are doing. It's definitely a good tip for people. Cameras are so cheap now, and they're so good.
Yeah, that's one of the main things I recommend to anybody that's like messaging me and about wanting to breed and stuff. They're like, "Oh, well, how do I watch for this if I'm at work and yada yada?" I'm like, cameras. That's exactly how it is. That's exactly what I've always done, because I also even like it for just not disturbing them. Like if I'm like, okay, are they starting to get kind of interested in each other? It's like I don't want to walk in if it's a more nervous pair and then they're all just looking at me and they stop what they're doing. So the camera makes it really easy to just kind of spy on them without them knowing.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much you miss when you don't see him. Obviously, if you're at work or something like that, or like I say, I don't have any cameras here now, and I hardly see any lockups now, especially on the outdoor stuff. I don't see any of them locked up outdoors. So yeah, it's nice to have that. Check on your phone. And the cameras are so good now. You can go back on the camera and do like timestamps and stuff, and see what's going on. I used to spend more time looking at my phone than I did working back when I was an electrician.
Yep. Yeah, that's me for sure. I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm watching the replay of the next day, or it's quite a lot of watching. If you had cameras in all of yours, you guys would need a full surveillance team constantly watching them. But
I'll tell the owner he'd probably be up for that if we can employ some of the guys from the local village just to watch all day.
That'd be cool. Hey, better than doing that than going out and catching the wild ones and flipping them, honestly. But
definitely.
But I definitely recommend cameras to anybody. It's also really, really helpful for nesting. I typically, when I know a female's getting close to laying, I normally have the enclosures up in the top of the enclosure and they're kind of looking down so I can see everything. But I'll typically kind of drop them down and put them right in front of the hole on the nest box, just so I can I know exactly when she's gone in there. And that's usually really helpful.
We'll get into the breeding a bit more in depth, but that's a thing that a lot of people do, trying to check that nest box. I've been guilty of it myself, and you can really spook a female out of nesting. They're really particular about nesting, which obviously we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, you can really spook one, and I've done it in the past where I've spooked one, and then she's gone and scattered them somewhere else when she was actually going to lay in that lay box. So again, I'm on your side with the cameras being really good. So when did you start breeding the tree monitors like seriously as a business, Parker?
So I really started to take it serious. Let's see, 2023. 2023 was when I really started to kind of buckle down. I got all new enclosures at the start of 2023. Started getting, I think I got my Parabomii at the start of 2023. And once I kind of buckled in then, and then I started getting, buckled down then. And then around, let's see, I started getting eggs laid towards the end of October. So it was around September of 2023 where I finally started getting lots of locks from all my pairs. And and then since then it's been, they've been fairly consistent since then. Some females are definitely trickier than others.
Have you found that with like different species or just individuals?
More individuals, I would say. Maybe I don't have the biggest, like a lot of them, I only have one pair producing pretty much for everything. The only species where I have two pairs producing now are my Cordensis, just because my younger pair that I actually didn't think was going to start like now, they started locking about how long has it been actually? I think it was about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Oh, I need to separate them. But so that's, other than that, I have some other individuals that I've been raising up. like I have a younger yellow female, I have a younger blue female, I have the sarong Persinus female. I just don't have males for them yet. I have males, but all the males that I have are like way bigger than they are, and I just don't really, even though they're all of age, I don't want to pair them with males that are like more than twice their size. So yeah, I'll probably that's kind of a big reason I held back some of my babies too. Because then I'm not going to wait for the babies to fully grow up to breed them to my younger females. But yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I'll send you some pictures after this about the size disparity you can get. So we've got a Jaipur female that she only lays like 2 eggs, and she's about that big, like literally maybe just over a foot, like total length. And she's in with a male that's double her size, and she's just produced a second clutch. So yeah, maybe give them a go if you want to. They're not that aggressive.
Yeah, they've never been too aggressive. Yeah, I probably would be fine. And I mean, like you see, like him and his girl, I haven't paired them yet, but I mean, the size disparity between them is giant, which is very typical of any large monitor species. I'm just not used to seeing that with tree monitors, so it's just like it always throws me off. But yeah, I think I probably it also will be nice to have 2 separate bloodlines too. That's probably the main motivator as to why I'm not pairing them with the larger males yet. But the main thing, I just need more space. I'm trying to work out some more space in these next few months, and then it'll be a lot easier to get some more males in, get some more pairs.
So was there any other challenges apart from space? I think every reptile keeper runs into the problem of space. Did you have any other like problems when you were setting up the facility?
Yeah, so I live in Arizona, which is very hot desert and very hot desert climate, and that was the biggest thing for a while, was combating just how dry it was and just keeping the humidity up in the enclosures. And getting these new PVC enclosures helped, but the biggest thing I think that really helped me recently is I got 2 big humidifiers for my tree monitor room. So now it keeps the room at like 50 to 55% humidity just constantly, which was really helpful. I don't have to spray nearly as much, but even when I do spray, it's just easier to keep it at the proper humidity levels. And that, and just combating the Arizona heat in the summer, that's always rough. But I've got my own mini split in the tree monitor room, and it is like we were talking about earlier, the electricity is very expensive for them to keep them nice and happy, especially here in summer when it's 120 degrees out. But yeah, other than that, and just really figuring out the females, that was really the only issues. Oh, and actually another thing, clearing them of all parasites, that was another thing that took a lot of time and stuff. I'm lucky enough where my vet here, Dr. Jaggers, shout out him. He lended me a microscope from his veterinary clinic and taught me like how to do my own fecal exams and stuff like that. So that saved me a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of just being able to actually collect fresh poop samples and not have to. Okay, now I got to drive it down, and I have to get there within an hour for it to be like really a proper sample. And that definitely has helped. And after I went through and treated everybody, because obviously a lot of mine are wild caught, and if they had been treated, when I treated them, the main thing that I only ever would find is pinworms, which is very common. You're honestly going to find, even in anything captive bred, it's very unlikely that you won't eventually find pinworms in them because they're just in all the feeders, all the bugs. You're not going to really find any without, well, I mean, they don't all have it obviously, but it's just a large majority. It's kind of unavoidable because you also can't really. I've asked my vet about like treating my bugs and like doing like if I have my own roach colony, if I can treat them for any parasites and stuff. But when you're trying to treat, he's explained it where when you're trying, I'm no vet, no exotic vet, so don't exactly quote me on this. But he was basically trying to say it's harder because the medications react differently with an insect, where it's like it'll kill the parasite and not the host in like a lizard or a mammal or something like that. But with the insects, it doesn't really work like that, at least with what we have available at but
Is there anything else
But
you're
yeah,
really finding apart from pinworm? Like I said, pinworm's super common in crickets and all sorts. Is there any surprises you've seen there with any of the animals you got?
I mean, I've seen some nasty stuff, some outliers. There was this cordensis I had. This was probably the worst one. I had a cordensis female that I got that was like a fresh import, and I was so hesitant to get her, and I just pulled the trigger anyways, got her, and she was perfect. She looked great, she acted great, she was tongue feeding daily, she was doing perfect. But this was actually the incident that made me start like really testing on my own, and like every time I get a new animal and draw blood, fecal exam like immediately, because she was perfect until she wasn't. I think I had her for about 2 months, and everything was perfect. She was eating daily, drinking water, looked great, and then suddenly I walked in the morning and she was just like laying very lethargically under her basking light, and I was like, that's kind of that's kind of abnormal. But I was like, I'll just keep an eye on it. Came back like 2 hours later, and she like would not move even if I opened the enclosure, and she was kind of more of a nervous one. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And so I kind of like touched her. She did run a little bit, but then she like laid back down and closed her eyes. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
something's wrong. So I called the vet, immediately took her in. They did all these tests, and just like within like hours, she was just declining. Like once I got her to the vet, we took her out of the bin. She's just not even trying to like run away. She's just laying there. It turned out she had some sort of bloodborne parasite, that they had never even like seen at the vet clinic I was at. They didn't even really like know. They knew what it was, but they had never seen it before. They only knew what it was because their literature or whatever. I don't know the exact
They
details.
found it in the book.
Yeah, I found it in the books. But yeah, they said it was some bloodborne parasite that she had that had to have come from the wild. And yeah, so that she ended up passing away, unfortunately. Like it wasn't even within 24 hours of when I noticed something wrong. And I mean, she was literally out running around drinking the day before that happened. That's just that's where imports are bad. Like something like pinworms is just like, they could live with pinworms no problem. What's funny, when I was testing all my tree monitors, I was like, okay, if any of these tree monitors doesn't have pinworms, it's got to be my male yellow, because he's always been hard for me to keep him down on weight. Like I always have to feed him less than everybody, because he just seems to get fatter way quicker off less food. And I was like, okay, if he's got nothing sapping nutrients from him, I would think he's got nothing sapping nutrients from him based off the way he acts. And I checked him, and he had the worst pinworm bloom out of all of them by far. It was quite a lot. Not a lot where it's like I made that sound horrible. It wasn't something horrible, but it was like, okay, I need to treat him. But it's just it just showed me how much they can tolerate and live with. Well, depending on what kind of nasty parasite it is, though. I mean, there's some nasty stuff that can come out of the wild. My vet has told me some things that have really scared me about stuff you can see. Like there's some you might even know about this. I think this is kind of common in some of the wild caughts, where there's like some parasitic worm that can live in their mouth, and it that's all I need to know about it. some parasitic worm.
Yeah. I'm yet to see it, but I think it was Peter or the owner here had said they seen it in some of the founding stock of green tree pythons. Might be the same one.
Probably.
Yeah, sound good.
Yeah,
some nasty tropical diseases going about. That's I go to obviously West Papua a lot, and I'm always worried about picking some sort of weird disease up. What have you been doing for like harm reduction, I guess, and treating them? Do you do any sort of quarantine with them, or?
Yeah, so if I do have some that are well, actually, just to like kind of prevent any transmission, if anybody does come down with something, everybody has their own tongs. So like I have a cart in the middle of my room, and I just have there's like 10 pairs of feeding tongs just scattered around them, and so like everybody gets their own. Well, each pair gets their own, because obviously they're gonna be paired up together. But if I do have someone that has something, I just immediately start treating them, and then I just make sure to really, like, if I do them last. So if I'm treating somebody for four parasites, but my main the main thing that I really try to do is I just won't even open their enclosure or touch their enclosure until I've done everybody else for the day. So then I do them, immediately wash my hands, take a shower, and then I'm not really going in the reptile room for the rest of the day. So there's not really risk of transmission, I guess you could say. There still is always
Yeah.
risk, but it mitigates risk.
That's smart.
But that,
And
that I use. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go on, sorry.
Primarily, I use Oh, sorry. I think there's like a slight delay, so I don't mean to keep.
No, you're good. No, I think you're going to answer my question anyway. What are you treating them with?
Oh yeah, that's actually exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, so mainly I use Panicer, which I know there's some people that get scared about Panicer, but my belief, and I've talked to my vet about this a ton, is as long as they are healthy, like as long as there's no underlying issues, there should be no problem giving them Panicer. Obviously, you don't want to like overdose them with it or give them. I'd never give it to them more than once a year, maybe twice a year, like every 6 months if I have something like bad. Like if it's just pinworms, never more than once a year. If I have them come down with something else, mainly Panicer. There's been some other ones that I've had to give them. They're trying to remember the names. I'm always bad with the
I wouldn't go into too much, Parker. Like we put a disclaimer. Me and you, and definitely not vets. So the best thing to do is go and see a vet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you suspect your lizard has parasites, don't just start giving them Panicer just because I said so.
Yeah.
Definitely make sure that you're even when I'm looking in the microscope and I check for fecals and stuff. I'll know kind of what a parasite egg is, or like I'll suspect that like that's a parasite egg. But I have no idea what kind of parasite it is, and I'm not just going to start treating them automatically. So I always send pictures to my vet clinic or my vet directly and have them tell me what it is and what I should treat with, treatment options, stuff like that. So it's not like I'm totally on my own doing it completely. It's just easier for me to be able to do the tests, and for fecal exams to be the most accurate, you want them to be the freshest. It's not always the easiest to scoop up samples and drive them down when I've got 30 tree monitors I'm trying to test. So. But
there you go. Reptile Whisperer just says there, she bought a book to learn about them and doing her own fecals, just like you, Parker. So yeah, if you can learn and get
very
good
cool.
with it, it's definitely gonna help.
I might have to know the name of that book. That sounds understanding. Oh, there. Oh, no, I didn't read the last part just now. Sweet. I will definitely look into that book. That would be great to have for sure.
Excellent. So let's talk about something a bit more positive apart from the parasites. One thing I did want to ask, obviously it sounded like the tree monitors, so setting up your facility might have been quite hard to source at the time.
Yeah. There were kind of it was kind of like the perfect storm for me in a lot of ways. Because even things like wood, like the manzanita wood and the cork logs and stuff like that I have, like that's really hard to find out here. For a lot of people like in the Midwest or even probably in the UK, there's a lot of wood, and there's a lot of wood that you can just go gather out in nature, out in your own backyard. Here, I mean, there is wood you can gather here, but it's just, I've tried using wood from trees here locally in Arizona, and it just doesn't work the best because it's like desert trees, desert wood, stuff like that, and it just immediately will like crumble under the humidity after like a month. So it doesn't work the best. Plus, it's not the easiest to clean. It's just a nightmare. But I ended up finding a supplier for wood. I have a buddy of mine that started building enclosures, which that's another thing that's really difficult to find. I mean, even just in America in general, there's actually in the last couple of years, there are a lot more companies that have popped up that can get you enclosures a lot faster. But back when I was like really looking for my enclosures, maybe I just wasn't, maybe there might be companies out there, but at the time I couldn't find any companies that could get me custom enclosures built for that wasn't going to cost me like $50,000 and wasn't going to take like a year for them to get me the actual enclosures. But then my buddy,
we've got a sponsor, so Focus Cubed Habitats are the way to go, I think. Or MJ will kill me.
Focus Cube is great. I actually do recommend Focus Cube often to
they look really smart.
Are getting tree monitors. Yeah, they're incredible. And I before I shout out who makes my enclosures, he actually doesn't make them for like the public really anymore. It's kind of more of just like a for his friends type thing. He's taken a new career path recently. But a buddy of mine makes all these enclosures for me, and he's here local, so it makes it really easy where I can just text him like, hey, I need this and this, give him the exact dimensions. I can tell him if I want specific holes cut out, stuff like that. and then I can just go drive. I can have them leave them in pieces. I can have them build them up and come drop them off to me. It makes things really easy for sure. But and I've always I've told him and like several other people, like if I if I didn't have you guys, I could not do all this stuff. It's like I couldn't source all that. There's I could build them myself, but I'm not the handiest. And when you're dealing with a lot of humidity and trying to keep humidity in, it can be really easy to mess up a home build like that. But
so what are your enclosures made out of, Parker?
PVC, mainly PVC. That's pretty much what they're all made out of. I've got some that are melamine, like this one down here below me, but that's for my bearded dragon. Pretty much anything that's in humidity or just in a larger enclosure is PVC. PVC is definitely the way to go. It's the lightweight, how light it is. It's probably the biggest plus for me.
And waterproof. Yeah, all the ones I made in the UK out of plywood, and they're starting to look pretty sorry for themselves pretty quickly. Within pretty much the first 6 months, they all started staining and stuff. So yeah, PVC is pretty hard to get in the UK. It's really expensive, I think, and we don't have many people making it there. So yeah, that's awesome. What size are the enclosures you'll use them?
So primarily for adult tree monitors, I have my pairs. For a pair, I keep them in 6x3x5s or 8x3x5s, really, because I keep them paired up year round pretty much, other than when the females are laying eggs. But then each individual has their own 3x3x5 or 4x3x5, and then I have them wall to wall with the enclosure with the opposite sex, and then I've just got a hole cut in the wall, so I can just block it off if I need to. I think I know, actually, I've seen, if I'm not mistaken, you guys keep them separate and introduce when the females start cycling, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Right? Pretty much. Now since I've been here, for sure, it'd be way easier if we could just keep them together. I think because we've got so many, it's quite hard to keep an eye on so many things.
Yep.
Yeah, things can go wrong.
Yeah.
So what I found is keeping them separate, even though it seems like it's more work. Like for the condition of the animals and more productivity, it's easier to keep them separate and put them together. In the UK, I've done it both ways, so I'm not saying you can't keep them together. I think if you can keep an eye on it and you can keep an eye on that female, make sure she's not getting picked on or overbred or stuff, then you can keep them together. I don't think it's an issue. But yeah, the farm here, we would just have so many females that wouldn't get seen, and then they especially outdoors as well, it's a lot harder to see them. The indoor stuff, we probably could keep them in pairs. I've just got used to keeping them separate now, and then introducing them. So yeah. Also, go on.
No, sorry, go ahead. sorry.
I also found, I don't know if other people have found it, they seem to breed well for like a year when you keep them together, and then they seem to like taper. It's almost like the male gets bored of the female. She can be cycling, and he kind of gets bored. And what I ended up doing was then separating them and putting them together, and then he'd be fired up again. So I've just taken that option out and then just put him in there when she's ready to go. And then obviously he's sort of psyched to breed.
Yeah. So I find that I'm still trying to figure out what I'm still playing around with keeping them together and keeping them separate. However, there's a few things that because I've seen some debates about this on Facebook, and one thing that I thought that was that I think is really something to like kind of consider when talking about like keeping them together. If you're in a situation like yours where you have so many, obviously you can't go through and tongue feed them every feeding each individual. You have to give them. I'm assuming you use like feeding cups for them.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
So at least with my pairs, if I put feeding cups in there with my pairs when they're together, there's no way. The female would probably have a missing nose in the first day, because the males will just immediately start going for the food they have. And even when I'm tongue feeding them, I always lure the male into whatever side the female's not in, so they're separated by that wall. Excuse me. And something that I personally think, because if I might have been telling you this before the podcast, I can't remember if I already said this on the podcast or not, but some of my pairs right now recently I've had consolidated into one side of what's normally the double enclosure for both the male and female. And since then, every pair that is consolidated like that hasn't bred, and I've expected them to start breeding by now. Normally the females overdue basically in everyone that's stacked on top. And in the past, that was also my problem. And they were together, and the only thing that was different that wall. And so I think the way that I have them set up, I think the reason it works keeping them together year round, because of, so the hole that I have in the wall is only about like 3 inches in diameter. It's fairly small. So they don't, if they're in opposite sides, they can't like see each other unless they're really like eye to eye right at the hole. And they typically spend most of the time up at the top of the enclosure. Excuse me. And sometimes, a lot of the time, they'll spend like several days, even though the hole's open, they'll spend like 3 full days apart from each other completely, just in the opposite sides of the enclosure. So they don't even see each other. So to me, I think that helps with keeping them together year round and them still being able to breed. Because I'm seeing that, especially with my yellows. My yellows have been the main one that have taught me that. Because I was doing the same thing when I first couldn't get my female to cycle. I had them separate. And but before that, I had them together in a big shower enclosure. I had like an enclosure that I built out of a shower. Out of like an old shower I got from Home Depot. And they, even though it was really big, they were constantly on top of each other. So I think there's something. I think the female starts feeling like maybe not scared, but she's just not fully comfortable. I just don't think they like to be fully on top of each other 24/7. So even though I am saying like I keep them paired up 24/7, I think that hole in the middle and just like the wall separating them makes a big difference, because they have that ability to be away from each other and stay separate for several days. Yeah. But I'm still learning. I've produced several babies by now, but it's still it's like I was telling you, it's all from one pair. I mean, they're all so different, even just within the different pairs I have, the different species. Like every individual is different. Yeah. So it still kind of depends. Who knows? In 3 months' time, I might be coming back on here like, oh yeah, we need to separate them, introduce when the females female cycling. You know what I mean? But
I think you can do it multiple ways. That tongue feeding thing is a great example. I wish I could get more tongue feed. The ones we keep outside will not do it. The ones indoors are actually starting to do it now. They just get more used to people. The ones outside, even though they're captive bred, are basically wild tree monitors. They just act exactly the same. I would love to be able to cycle them and stuff. If I could tongue feed like I was doing in the UK, it'd be brilliant. But yeah, we're using like feeding cups, and all that happens is you just get a giant male. The female can look all right for like a month or two, and then you just get a skinny female, even though you've been chucking loads of food in there. And like I said, because we've got so many, the easiest way when I come here was like, right, we'll get rid of this problem. We'll separate them all off, and then just put them together for breeding.
Yeah, no, I love feeding cups. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeding cups whatsoever. I think I like feeding with tongs just because I like to know exactly what they eat. I keep notes of exactly what I feed them every day. I've got like several notes on my phone that are just like I think I have like 3 full years worth of just feeding logs from all the tree monitors. But I like having it because then I can go back, where a lot of the times I'll have questions where I'm like, okay, is this a normal behavior for her right around now when I'm at this stage of the cycle, or just at any time? During breeding really is what I'm referencing. But I'll go back in the notes. I'll be like, okay, when did she lay the eggs? Okay, let's go back to this month. How is she eating leading up to that? Yada yada. Okay, it matches what she's doing now. Boom boom. Yeah. So I think notes for anyone starting breeding, I definitely think notes are very, very helpful, especially in the long run.
Yeah, massively. I used to have calendars back in the UK when obviously didn't have. I'm trying to work out a system now to actually be able to do more notes. It's so helpful, especially knowing each female. Like you said, you could note things down, and it does start following a pattern. The ones I had in the UK, I could literally set my clock to when they were going to cycle, when they're going to breed, when she was going off food, and you could look through. But after like 3 years, you could look through, and the dates started matching up. So yeah, note taking is a bit of a lost art in the reptile world. Everyone used to do it sort of a long time ago, but people seem to have stopped doing it now.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a great thing to do. I also take I photo log everything. Like every time a female's cycling, I take a bunch of photos, save it.
That's a lot easier than it used to be for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And going back to enclosures, that 3 foot deep is what I really like. If you can afford to do that, I really like it. And then 5 foot tall is what I would say was ideal, really. But yeah, that 2 foot deep seems to work for a lot of people. But once you've gone to 3 foot, it's really hard going back to a 2 foot, I find.
I agree. I think just putting that extra foot in the depth turns it less to like where it feels more like just like it's like an actual, like I feel like the 2 foot deep is more like a display. Like it feels like they're trapped in like a picture frame on the wall. Like they just can't turn fully without stretching
Yeah,
horizontally. I just never like it. But the 3 foot makes it feel like it's like a piece of the
yeah,
habitat cut right out of the forest and put
yeah.
in a little enclosure. But yeah,
Yeah, it's
I also
difficult to do in a lot of cases, but I think 2 foot. Obviously, if you've made it already, it fits through doors and stuff really easy. As soon as you get to 3 foot, it's really hard to get through a door. You
that
sort
is
of
the
have
one thing.
to sit through.
Yeah. Yep. Every time I have to move enclosures, that's what takes so long. Like that's like this guy's enclosure. I had to break it all down, move all the pieces up, build it back up, and
Yeah,
it's a pain, but it's worth it at the same time. Just because I love that 3 foot, especially
yeah,
for like large lizards like this. I want to go 4 or 5 foot deep for them. These are not
yeah,
their final enclosures. This for the lace monitor is a 6x3x4, and then he's right next to his female who's just out of frame. I think she's yeah, it's all blocked, whatever. But and then I've got them set up kind of similar to like how I do the tree monitors, where I've just got a much bigger hole in the walls that are touching, and I'll just when she's starting to kick into a cycle, I'll open that up and hope for the best. But
definitely.
yeah, that the deeper enclosure, I think
Yeah,
it's well worth it if you can do it. But there's like, unless you've got double doors, you can't fit it through any doors. So
yeah,
that
that's the only drawback, and it takes up a lot more space in a room. But like I said, once you've gone to that 3 foot, it's really hard going back to a 2 foot after that. I don't know, like you said, there's something about it that makes sense. Just feels like a better cage when you've got that depth as well as the height and everything else. It's a lot
for
nicer.
sure.
So what lighting and stuff are you using in your enclosures, mate?
Typically, I'll do so I do a basking spot, a deep heat emitter, and then a UVB and a grow light. And I like to use the Arcadia Luminize 6% forest bulbs.
Yeah,
Those I love those Luminize, man. Those Luminize are incredible. For years I wanted something just like Luminize that like basically mimics dusk, dawn, and night, because I've
yeah,
always when I first started getting into tree monitors or just reptiles in general, I always wanted to kind of like mimic the sun. And I would do it in ways where I'd like turn my basking light off in the morning, turn it on at midday, leave it on, or like I had it on a dimmer at some point at one point where I was like dimming it so it was a little bit cooler in the morning, hottest during the middle of the day, a little lower at night. So now typically what I'll do, so in the morning, UVB turns on at 7 a.m. and then the deep heat emitter turns on as well. So it'll start slowly warming the enclosure, but there's no basking light on yet. So they'll kind of come out, wake up, and then at 11, the heat emitter turns off, basking light turns on, grow light turns on. So now it's really bright in the enclosure. Excuse me. And then the basking light turns on. So then the temperature really starts to pick up. And then I leave the basking lights on until about 5:30 at night. Then they turn off, heat emitter turns back on, and then just turns off at night. So it gradually cools down before nighttime. And then at night, I just turn everything off. And in the wintertime, I let it get as low as even high 60s sometimes in there. Typically I try to let it drop to like 74-ish, 75. Sometimes it's just too hard to do that in the summer here in Arizona, because it'll be 1 a.m. and it's still 95 degrees outside. So it is rough. So for lighting for the Ferguson zones for the UV, I keep them at the peak of the day when the UV is the brightest. It's like about a 4.5. But then it averages around, I keep them around 3.5 is about the average. But I like to offer gradients though. They've got even just throughout the day, like they can go up and lay in the really intense spot, or they can go down lower and chill where it's still a little bit milder. But
yeah, they need somewhere to get away from it for sure, some sort of shaded area. Yeah, 3.5 is pretty average for what I found when I found them in West Papa. That's what I tend to aim for with the UV on them. But yeah, as long as they can get away from it as well. Are you keeping bioactive, or what are you using for substrate?
Not bioactive. I kind of bioactive actually, in the sense where I keep getting wood lice in my enclosures, and they're not that's not exactly bioactive, but I think
Yeah.
they do eat the poop sometimes. But
Yeah.
because sometimes I swear I'll be like, I think there was a poop there that I meant to clean up, and it's gone. But yeah, no, I just use
proper bioactive is pretty hard with them with the plants. I call everything when you've got a few wood lice, which it definitely isn't bioactive, but naturalistic.
Yeah.
With wood lice and other stuff. What substrate do you use? Sorry.
Yeah, so mainly I use a mix of, I'll use peat moss, like 50% peat moss, 50% cocoa husk, just to
Nice.
kind of add that aeration. I'm thinking about switching the peat moss to cocoa fiber. I never know how to say the other word, but yeah, I'm thinking about switching to that. I recently was reading something that Mike's Monitors, I saw he like reposted on Facebook, and it was talking about how peat moss is like super acidic and like burns the nostrils and stuff like that. And when I read that, I was like, huh, that makes sense, because every time I'm outside mixing that stuff up, I'm like sneezing black stuff for the next like 5 hours, and my eyes are all irritated. But yeah, so I might end up changing that. But right now that is what I'm using in all my enclosures.
Excellent. And then what's the ambient? Sorry, did you say that, Parker? What sort
Oh,
of
the ambient. Yeah, so in the top of the enclosure, I like the ambient to be around 82, maybe 84 more in the summer, or like the peak of the day. Middle of the enclosure is more around 78 to 80, and then the bottom's 75 to 77, kind of depending on the time. And then basking spot, I keep the adults basking spot, the focal point, like right around 120. 120 to 125, somewhere in between there. That seems to be like the perfect spot where they'll bask for like 20 to 30 minutes, then they're out moving around doing other stuff, and then they'll come back a couple hours later, an hour later, or something like that. And then yeah, and then did I already say nighttime temps? Yeah, I said, my bad. Yeah, sorry.
High 60s to around 75, I think you said.
Sorry, what'd you say?
About 75 at night, 75 Fahrenheit.
Yeah. About 75 typically during like the summer. I try to get it a little bit cooler. I think that's good for the males and for sperm production from the males too.
Yeah, for sure. Do you struggle at all, even in the UK when I had an insulated room, keeping the ambience low enough in the summer must be a nightmare for you. Do you have on thermostats, or is it a challenge?
Oh man, oh man, my electricity bill in July here, because in July, if there's days that are under 110, it's like a cool day here in Arizona. It is so hot here.
So you're running the mini split, aren't you?
Mini split,
yeah.
And then I've actually, when July rolls around, June, July, I also have like another like AC that you kind of put up in the window, and I have to wheel that in, and I also run that. And then even then, it's like it's still a battle to keep it cool enough. But it's been good so far. It definitely works just about perfectly. So
excellent. Moving on then. What do you feed them?
Diet. Okay. Yeah. So I like to use roaches. I like to use dubia roaches. I know some people don't, for the scare of lactic acid, which I totally get. But the people I've talked to, as long as you're not feeding them high protein, and as long as you don't use the adult females are typically fine. The adult males, I've heard, are high in uric acid, but I've also heard different opinions on the males, the whole specific male dubia roach thing. So I'm no scientist.
I don't know the answer on that. It seems to be less to a adult male dubia roach. I thought the more protein would be in an adult female, but maybe I'm wrong.
Or if I said, I meant uric acid. My bad if I said protein.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Early morning if I my bad. But
no. I was thinking protein.
Oh, okay. But the uric acid content, because how it was explained to me, which made honestly a lot of sense, because the males don't have any, they're not producing babies or anything. That extra protein that they eat just kind of sits in their gut and turns into uric acid, whereas the females are producing babies and eggs and stuff, and that uric acid gets used up. And then the younger ones are still growing, so that's where that energy is going for them, or that protein. But for my roaches, I just don't even feed them protein. Sometimes I'll give them oats, but that's really only if I'm trying to like keep the colony. And I like have a colony, but it's like my colony, it's really just from me ordering them and replenishing them, because I just use so many of the adults. They never the adults that I have in there die, and then there's not a generation waiting for them because I've already used them all as feeders. But yeah, I'll use dubia roaches as my main feeder. For adults, I feed them for adult males, I feed them every 4 to 5 days. When I first get males in, if they're like on the skinnier side, I'll for sure do every 3 days, maybe even 2 if they're really skinny. But I used to do every 3 days, and there was just some males that they didn't really respond the best to that, or maybe it's more what I'm using to feed. I don't know, but I found every 4 days, every 5 days works perfectly for males at keeping them like right at the weight I want them. And then I'll give them 4 to 6 roaches each feeding. And then I give them 1 day-old quail every 2 weeks. And then for adult females, I feed them every 3 to 4 days, kind of depending if they're cycling. Feed them a little bit more for egg production, obviously. And then I give them quails typically every 7 to 10 days. Excuse me. And then if they're cycling, I'll give them like a much heavier diet of quail and sometimes hopper mice on occasion. Typically, I won't give them hopper mice unless it's getting close to like ovulation, maybe sometimes even vitellogenesis for like my blue tree my blue tree female. I'll give her as many rodents as she wants. An average meal for her when she's cycling is like 3 to 4 quail and like 1 or 2 hopper mice. I mean, she just eats so much. And then for all my other girls, like the biggest meal any of them will eat, which will be like, they'll do it once in a couple of weeks, they'll eat like 2 quail and a hopper mice. I'm like, all right, you're good for now. But typically I stay away from the mice unless their hip bones are really sinking in. If their hip bones are really sinking in, maybe I'll bring it up to like at most like 60% quail, 40% mice. Well, like in just terms of the high protein food, I'm still giving them roaches. But yeah. And then for babies, for babies and juveniles, I feed babies every 2 days up until they're like 6 to 8 months old. Then I kind of go more every 2 to 3 days until they're like a year and a half old. Then I almost strictly do every 3 days. And same thing for them. I mainly roaches. I will give babies and juveniles a quail every like 7 days typically. I like giving them to them a little more often. But yeah.
It's good. Very in depth. I can tell you take your notes, knowing all your different percentages and stuff. You guys don't get hoppers very easy, like locust over there.
No, grasshoppers are one that I would 100%, I would use roaches. I would use mainly grasshoppers if I could, because I know that's definitely what mimics their natural diet the most, I'd say. But at this time, I don't have the space to keep as many grasshoppers as I would need to like supply all the tree monitors with like a steady supply of grasshoppers. I'm thinking I might try to do something out back though, because I think there is a way. In the past, I've been thinking I can't do it outside, but I think there is a way I can set them up outside. So I am actually recently thinking about trying to set something up for a bunch of grasshoppers, because if I would love to get them from the people that produce them, but if I were to buy grasshoppers as like a normal feeding, I'd literally be spending like 10 times as much as what I spend on roaches. So it's just, they're really expensive here, and they're hard to find because you have to have proper permits. And as far as I know, the only person in America producing them is Kai Fan. And I think he still is, I'm pretty sure. I need to actually message him. It's been a while since I've talked to him. But I know he's slowed down production recently, if not stopped altogether.
Yeah, I think he's going through an illness. I don't know if he's over that. I've seen some posts up. I haven't seen anything from Kai. I hope he's okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But, no, you're good. But like I said, in the UK, we're really spoiled. We can get them a really reasonable price, like bags of 100 of them. But you guys in the States seem to struggle. You don't think about ever feed any crickets?
I do use crickets for the adults. Sorry, I didn't mention that for babies. For babies, I start them out on crickets. I'll typically feed them. They'll only take crickets up until the earliest I've had them start taking dubia was the blues, and they were like 2 months old. That was kind of a special case because they were so dang big. I was like, okay, you're ready to start eating them. But like normally, I won't start offering dubia until they're 3 or 4 months old, and then that's when they really start taking an interest. But crickets, I give them pretty much mainly crickets. and mainly crickets and chopped up incubated quail until they're 3 or 4 months old. But then, yeah, crickets, they definitely respond to best when they're young. For my adults, they would definitely eat crickets. But they're just so much smaller. Like the biggest crickets I can get are like a tiny little bite to a lot of my adults. So that's why I really just don't use them too often. But yeah, I'd probably have to put like 50 of them in there for them to get in a cup for them to get a sizable bite. But
Right.
But yeah, I know several other keepers do use primarily crickets, which I do think is interesting. I've thought about using some more often, but the dubia work really well for me.
Yeah, we use a mix here. We use quite a few crickets. We obviously breed them here at the farm, and then all our locusts we actually have to catch from the paddy fields around us. And during the wet season, we can't catch them. So in the dry season, we can go collect as many locusts as you want. But this time of year, or just coming out this time of year, we can't get them. So they go on to pretty much crickets and dubia. Are you tongue feeding your babies the dubia?
Yeah, I'll tongue feed them
everything, even the babies.
Yeah, even the babies. Yeah, it's
okay.
It's when I'm feeding, it takes me a few hours every day, but it's worth it. And I don't know. I like it because it's also like a chance to kind of always know how they're behaving. Like if there's like I'll know when something's I always catch I knock on wood because I haven't had anything in a long time, thank God. But anytime I have problems with any of their health, I always catch it like almost immediately because it's like the first thing they stop doing is they stop eating normally. And I'm like, okay. I don't always just like immediately freak out when they start eating out normally, but it's like I kind of know what their normal routine should be just based off of how I'm tongue feeding them every feeding. So that just really helps me to have kind of a peace of mind. Whereas like I could leave the food dishes in there and I could just count how many bugs I put in there, and then obviously I know exactly how much they ate off of that when I would go around and collect them. But still, the main reason I don't do that
as much work doing that as tongue feeding them.
yeah, exactly. But also the risk of how I was talking about earlier, how I do keep them together or the tunnel open year round, and it's if I do that, the males, oh man, my male black and my male Maruki would literally kill their female within days probably because they're so crazy food motivated. It's nuts. But
yeah, it can be a pain. Usually the female, like I had a couple of blacks at home. The female would like grab the hopper or the mouse or whatever, and then go and show it to the male. You're like trying to keep them apart. Like there's something about it. Go and show the male. And obviously he's wolfed his down straight away. Then he'll grab straight onto the female. It's like, why didn't you just go to that other side of the vivarium?
Exactly. No, mine do that all the time, and it's so annoying. I'm like, are you trying to get your face completely ripped open? Like, come on. But
yeah, definitely.
They're funny.
That leads me on to the next bit, Parker. Obviously, tongue feed them, and you're from what I've seen, your treatment as a super social. So you want to just go into how you socialize them? I think that's like we were saying a bit earlier before we get into all the breeding stuff. There's a real good bit of enjoyment to be had from just raising a captive bred tree monitor up from a baby and getting it social.
Oh yeah. I've put this on my story a couple of times, but I think the best pet reptile you can have is a truly socialized, hand tamed, non-afraid tree monitor. They're so incredible when they're like that because you can really see their true personality. You can see how smart they really are and like how curious, how inquisitive. And so for wild caught adults, the most like all of my adults, there's a couple that are kind of special cases. Like my male black tree, he's a straight wild caught. He was crazy when I first got him. Now I can just literally go in there and just snatch him up, and the only thing I have to worry about is that he'll react to my movement too quick and think I'm a bug, and he's giving me a couple quick looks with his mouth open, but then he always stops right before he gets my hand, thankfully. But I'm always as long as I kind of show him my hand first, he'll just let me pick him right up. I can pet him. He's not scared at all. Other than that, though, there's like very few wild caught adults that I have that are tame like that. The only other one I have that's like that is my two captive bred. My captive bred Sarong female is kind of almost pretty much completely hand tame, and then my female Cordensis, who's captive bred, she's also just like completely hand tame. But then all the others, the most that I'm really able to kind of work with them with is the number one thing that's helped is tongue feeding. That's also the biggest reason I tongue feed, is that's the best way to desensitize them to you, because then they relate you to food. And so pretty every adult that I have right now will, if I have food, they'll walk out onto my arm. I can lure them anywhere. How we were talking about before the podcast, where I take weights. That's where it's really beneficial for taking weights on them without causing any stress. But then for the babies, the only way that I really think that I'm able to get them that tame is the way that I work with them like right when they hatch. So I set up a camera on my incubator, and then I have a motion detection notification that goes off anytime they're hatching. So it's funny because in doing that, the number one time, at least for mine, that they like to come out is like 3 or 4 in the morning. Like that's always when they like to crawl out, which is, I never sleep when I've got baby tree monitors hatching, because I also set alarms like every hour, maybe 2 hours sometimes, if I'm like, okay, I don't think, because now I kind of know, like, okay, if he pipped at this time, he's probably not going to come out for like 12 to 16 hours. So it's like, if they'll pip right before I'm going to bed, I'm like, okay, I can sleep through the whole night. He's not going to come out in the middle of the night. But I've found, the reason I do that is I've found for sure that if the later I get there to when they've actually crawled out of the egg, the harder it is to socialize them and get them to calm down. Because I've got a couple that a couple of my holdbacks at first, when, how do I explain it? Or not even my holdbacks, actually. Sorry, let me start over. So when I first get them out of the egg and out of the incubator, ready to go in the enclosure, I just kind of hold them and work with them for like 30 to 45 minutes. But as I've done it more and more, I've found that even just the way I actually handle them and the different things I do really matters for how they're going to be later on. I don't want to go too in depth, but yeah. So I basically I think they're so impressionable those first few hours out of the egg, but just those first few days, that first week, couple weeks in general, they're extremely impressionable. So it's like, if you're grabbing one and like kind of just like restraining it, making it, that's obviously going to spook it in a lot of cases. How I think of it when I'm working with them is I'm just like trying to, when I first get them out, I'm trying to just show them different things without scaring them. Things that I'm going to be doing every day, that like moving my hand over top of them, like things like that, like kind of how I touch them, things along those lines, basically. And that has definitely helped tremendously. But also, not only that, just working with them daily from then on, at least for that first month, especially, like pretty much almost daily, I work with them. And I have slacked off on, and some of my holdbacks. So for example, one of my blues I didn't hold quite as much as the others later on. And at first he was just as perfect as the others. He still is, don't get me wrong. I can still go in there and pick him up, no problem. The difference is if I were to go in there, he'll let me pick him up, hold him, no problem. But like if I move quick or something like that, or like if I jump or if I drop something that's loud, he will run. He won't be scared of me, but he'll still get scared, if that makes sense. Or if I have to like secure his head for anything, like if I'm trying to check his mouth or something, or he ate something he's not supposed to, if I secure his head, after I let go, he will be like kind of spooked and he won't want to be near me for a little bit. But then I've got my baby Bomei, who I still hold like every day, because they're, sorry, I show a little bit of favorites, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, those baby Bomei, I have literally like never seen one of them get scared. It's like impossible to freak them out. The other day, actually, or recently, one of them got a little cut on one of their lips, so I've just been kind of putting some stuff on it. And I can literally take her out and just fully, like, I'll have her head in between my fingers and she's just trying to squeeze her head out. But she's like, it's so funny because they're normally like, they get this look in their eye, their pupils are all dilated. They're like trying to fight. A lot of the adults, if you really secure their head, that's when they'll try to bite. That's the only time I've seen a lot of my adults try to bite, is when you actually go to restrain their head. But these babies, I mean, they're just trying to they're like, what are you doing? Like, let me out of here. They're just trying to wiggle out. And then the second I let go, it's like they just sit there. They go back to licking. They go back to trying to dig in my shirt. They go back to trying to dig in my ear. It's like, it's so fun when they're really that desensitized. So I'm glad I have like that one blue that taught me that, because now I haven't had any since then that have been like that. All my yellows are just as tame as can be. But basically what I'm getting at is I think, in my opinion, you can socialize any tree monitors to some degree. You just have to be aware of what their boundaries are, because especially wild caughts, they're going to have their own boundaries. And if you push them too far, they're not going to take that as they're never going to trust you. They're always going to be afraid. And that's where it's helpful with starting with a captive bred. It's got a blank slate. You can impress on it. You show it the things that it needs to be scared of or not be scared of. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just having them captive bred.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're chalk and cheese between the wild caughts and the captive bred, especially the babies.
Oh, yeah.
So you haven't found any difference between any of the species? You think you've got it sorted between like the blues? All seems to work exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, I will say among my adults, I will say there's definitely some variation. Among the babies, there's been nothing, but they're all like the exact same. It like some of the maybe how they are at first. I feel like that's kind of more of an individual thing though, because I had one blue that, like, the second I stuck my hand in the egg box to pick him up, he just instantly bit my finger right away. Like, didn't even give me a warning or anything, just latched onto my finger. I was like, oh, this one's going to be a little demon. But then he ended up being one of the most tame. And then the same thing with the Cordensis. All four of the Cordensis bit me at least at one point. And then, if anything, they bit me at first, but then 5 minutes later, they were completely good. It's like they were, if anything, easier to calm down than the others. They went from 100 to 0 like really quick, whereas the others take a little bit more time to kind of come down. But then among adults, I definitely would say I've noticed some like some things like for blues. Everyone seems to say this about blues, and I would 100% agree. Blues do seem to be a little more just maybe not nervous, I would say, but more just spazzy. They just spaz out a lot easier. Like, my blues are very reactive to just anything, but versus but then at the same time, the most nervous tree monitor I've ever had by far was my female yellow tree. She was horrible for 2 years. She wouldn't even tongue feed for me for a year and a half. I didn't even get her to take one thing off the tongs for a year and a half. And now she's literally my best female. I can go in there and pet her on the chin and she's no problem. But definitely. Oh, and then Bakari and Bomei, definitely, I would say, are more confident. They seem to have the most confidence I've found out of all the species. But
yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, I found the same with the blues, to be fair. Apart from their color, they're actually my least favorite out of the tree monitors for that reason. All the ones I've got, they're like super spazzy, but they're obviously gorgeous. And then a bit like you are with the Bomei. My favorite's obviously the Risingrai. And I think they're the best and the most outgoing and everything. But I don't know. I think you get a bit I don't know, biased towards whichever one you prefer. But yeah, on that, like I said, I work with, you know, hundreds of them now, and even like out of all the ones, the blues for some reason just seem to be a bit more skittish.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, even like how that one baby I was talking about, the other blues completely fine, but I can't help but one. Well, it's not actually. Sorry, let me backtrack, because there was another baby that was like that at the start. Like a few months ago, he was kind of like that, where he reacted more to the way I moved and stuff, and I've done, but the blues just seem to be a little bit more nervous. I was curious if you had that experience with Bomei too, because obviously I don't know many other people that have worked with several Bomei, but my Bomei, I would say, are like, every Bomei I've worked with has like tongue fed within the first couple of days of me having them, and the only other species I've had that in is the Bakari. But
we got some spazzy Bomei as well.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I just gotten lucky then, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's down to the individual, and it points to how intelligent they are. Like you were saying before, with like yellow tree monitor, that wouldn't tongue feed at all. When they actually realize what's going on, you can actually switch them over, which is a great thing to have with these tree monitors. You can sort of, even the worst of the worst can, if you put enough time into them, you can get them over. But yeah, I think it's down to the individual. I'm trying to think now. We work with a lot of them. I'm skewed because all the outside stuff is just completely spazzy. I'm trying to think of the inside stuff, and I think the most outgoing indoors is the Beckerai, and then the yellows, and then the ones I noticed being really sort of skittish are the blues, and then the Bowmire somewhere in between. We got some really nice ones that sit there and that. So yeah, I think it's probably down to the individual, but for some reason, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, and yourself just then, for some reason, the blues seem just a bit more skittish.
Yeah, which is interesting too, since they're the largest. You'd think, if anything, they'd have the more confidence out of all of them. But yeah, they're crazy, and it's also funny because the Cordensis, I would say, at least in the Cordensis and really the Prasinus, they seem to be the most aggressive. Not aggressive like with each other, but just like they're the ones that'll huff up and kind of give you that look. And if any, the only ones that I've seen, the only tree monitors that I've ever seen that are that have tried to bite just off of like grabbing them right away are Prasinus. My buddy Mason had some Maruki males that were just evil. Like if you stuck your hand in the enclosure, they're gunning for your hands. My male Maruki's kind of like that. If you wake him up, he keeps trying to sleep in his water dish, and I keep giving him a shallower water dish, and it doesn't matter. He'll still find a way to cram himself in there. So I go in there and I'll poke him with the tongs, and he gets mad, like really mad. Any of the others, if I were to go in there and poke them, they'll just take off running and go hide in the log. Yeah. But he'll like stand his ground, and there's been a couple times he's fully bit the tongs. So I've actually stopped using them because they're metal, and I don't want him to hurt himself on them. So I'll use the plastic Mister nozzle. I'll just nudge him out of there. I'm like, dude. But yeah, he's aggressive, and it seems to be something with those Prasinus, and it's funny because those are like the smallest typically that you see, the Prasinus and the Cordensis. But any ones that I've seen that are spicy, I guess you could say, are those ones. But,
I found the same, especially the Cordensis for some reason. A lot of the Cordensis, like really small Cordensis, they do the huff and puff and sort of look at you like that. So that's interesting. Interesting you say about the water as well. Paul, who was on earlier from Paul's monitors, I think he had a Merauke male or female that just used to sit in the water bowl all the time.
Yeah, I actually talked to him a little bit about that. It's so funny because my friend Cody, I believe I don't think it was a Maruki, but it was I think it was a sarong, but it was also a green tree that slept in the water dish. And I've never seen it with any of my other species until I got this male Maruki, and now he tries to do it at least once a week. I'm like, oh my God, dude, because I don't want him to get a skin infection or a fungal infection. Yeah. But yeah,
for sure. And sometimes it can be mites as well. Just to check if people are soaking, just to check the water bowl for mites. I know people have had problems with that. Snakes do it a lot of the time, but you're too on top for it to be mites by the sounds of it. You'll be having them under a microscope.
I honestly, I am, now that you've said that, I am going to take a close look next time he's in there. I'm sure it's not, but I actually haven't thought mice. I've never on my mind because I don't have any snakes. So it's like, I'm never thinking of mice. Obviously I still can, but it's not nearly as much of a risk, but, I am going to check that. Thank you for that idea, because that is a good.
I've had them because I used to keep snakes and obviously the monitors together. And the snakes every now and then would get mites, and they did go over to the monitors. I've had it, and then I got really, really paranoid because I used to have a Risingri that used to just bathe in its water bowl, and I'd get it out and check, and it's like, no, there's nothing on it at all. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, I think they're just quirky. I think they just want to have a spa day,
a little jacuzzi. So let's go into the breeding, which is the bit that everyone likes to talk about. You had some amazing success and a bit of an accolade to you for breeding the first Varanus Bowmire in the States. Do you want to just talk about that? Why you do that, Parker? I really need to go to the toilet, mate. So if you just go into that, I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Go ahead. Yeah, no problem. So I first bred Bowmire. I got my eggs October 28th. I remember the day, October 28th, 2023. And then they started hatching April 10th, 2024. And I got 4 eggs, 4 babies. All 4 hatched perfectly healthy, nice and big. And I've since then, my female that produced those babies, she bred with the male. I think it was about, they hatched in so after she laid them in October, they started locking again in December. No, sorry. They started locking again in January. She was getting ready to lay eggs at the very end of February / beginning of March. And on the exact day, because typically my females will lay almost exactly 30 days from at least one day of locks. So like if I have multiple days of locks, I know at least 30 days from one of them, typically one of the locks in the middle, although I've had some be from the first day of locks, some from the very last day of locks. But I was counting and I was expecting this specific day for her to lay them. I wake up in the morning, I check my cameras like I normally do. I see she's not out basking like she normally would be. So I'm like, oh, she's definitely down in her lay box, laying the eggs. I rush over. I'm all excited. I'm like, oh, let's dig up some more Bomi eggs. I found her dead in her log, basically, is long story short. So I lost my first female that produced the babies that I currently have. So that's why, if you've been wondering where future or more Bomi clutches from me have been, that's what happened. Now, thankfully, I have 2 more adult females. So I'm working on them. I just got them about 2 months ago. So still kind of new, but I'm starting to really dial in my older girl. I have one girl that's probably close to, she looks like she's probably around 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. A little bit older, not like, she's big too. And then I've got another girl that's probably near 2.5 years old. She's like almost at that breeding size. She's probably at that breeding size, but still just a bit smaller than my other adults. But yeah, so hopefully I'll be getting some more Bomi eggs now here soon, the next few months, fingers crossed. But yeah, so I still have my first 4 babies. That's why I ended up keeping the first 4. Was after she died, I was like, I gotta keep these guys, and I mainly wanted to keep them until I knew the gender for sure, at the very least. And I'm pretty sure I've got a 1.3. Still a little early to tell, I guess you could say, but I see it a lot in the head shape, which isn't always the most reliable. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see, but I'm almost pretty certain it's a 1.3. Excuse me. So I may actually. I've been tossing around the idea of letting go of one of those girls. Excuse me, and we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Kind of want to.
I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. There's nothing better than keeping the ones back. I've just had to sell like all my whole back rising ride that I've been growing up, obviously, because I've moved over here now, and I was keeping that. And the first ones I bred actually bred for me, and there's no better experience than breeding ones you've bred yourself. That's awesome. But also, Parker, that is a thing of like how amazing to be the first person to breed them. They're like, that is just reptile keeping 101. You get these like amazing highs and then these gut wrenching lows. So really thank you for sharing that, because not many people would have shared that.
Yeah. I kind of didn't say anything about it for a while because I was just like, I mean, what's the point? But it's what ended up happening. So it honestly is a miracle I even got eggs from her in the first place. So I had a full necropsy done on her and everything, and her kidneys were only functioning at like a third of the normal rate that they're supposed to function, which led to her not being able to really retain water, which then led to a buildup of uric acid. And what happened was because it was so sudden, because she, like I said, she had eggs in her. She had a full clutch of eggs in her. And she was hanging the night before. I had literally just given her a drink of water. She wasn't eating because she was so close to laying the eggs. But that wasn't obviously abnormal to me because she wasn't lethargic. I mean, not any more lethargic than you'd expect a gravid female to be. She was still walking around. If I'd opened the enclosure door, she's sticking her head up, looking at me, fully alert. And I literally had just given her a drink that night, like right before I left at like 7:30. She was on the wall, and I went in there, gave her a drink off the mister. She drank the water, no problem. But after my vet told me that about the kidneys, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because she was always by far my best drinker. I would see her drink out of the water bowl almost daily. But on top of that, every time I offered her a drink off the mister, she would drink it almost immediately, which none of the others did that. And I at the time, I was like, oh, it's just great. She just loves to stay hydrated. But now it makes sense to me where she just could never retain water. She was always dehydrated. So that sucked, but that's just another thing where it's like, that's the risk with imports, which she was an import. And when I got her, she was all right, but she was pretty beat up. She still had fresh scars under her armpits, which I'm pretty sure are from some sort of trap that I'm guessing they use to catch them in the wild. And she was just skin and bone and just dehydrated. So Odds
Yeah.
are, I suppose she could have been born with the kidney issues or whatever, but it's more than likely damage that was caused by just severe dehydration or malnutrition during the importation process, which is just like, just such a shame, because it doesn't have to be like that. But that's why I really appreciate what like you guys do there at Prestasi. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm so bad at pronunciation.
No, that is it.
Okay, perfect. but
we're
it's so great for the hobby.
Yeah, you can import as long as it's from us.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's from captive bred good animals. but
that sucks. But at least you got something out of it. It can go way. I've had things go way worse where you lose animals and you don't get anything out of it. So you have to look at the positive. But there's nothing more risky you can do than breed any reptile. Really, you can keep stuff so well, so easily for a long time and put it together, and it can be your favorite animal you've raised up for 5 years, and something awful happens. So really enjoyed it. Don't just rush into this breeding malarkey with especially if you haven't got tough skin. Like I've learned it over 20 years. You've really got to take the knocks with this with the reptile game when it comes to breeding.
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, there's definitely, and especially how attached we all get to our animals. It's
they're so personable, the tree monitors. Do you know what I mean? They're such like almost bird-like, and they have definitely got a personality, and that makes it even worse when you lose them.
Oh man, funny story about personality that I just thought of actually that I wanted to share. So if you notice the scar that I have under my eye, there's this baby Bomi eye that is convinced. I don't know if it's my actual eyeball or if it's my eyelashes, but it's something with my eye, which is dangerous. It's funny because now I literally wear safety glasses anytime I'm in the baby Bomi eye enclosure, because he thinks my eyes are food. I don't know why, but when he was younger, he kept jumping into my eye and like trying to bite me. And it was like funny, haha. Now that he's older, it's not so funny anymore because he sliced my eye open pretty dang good a few weeks back.
Yeah,
or actually, that's probably about a month ago. And so I'll be in there. He's actually my most, well, no, I mean, there's nothing that's more aggressive about him or anything like that. He literally just thinks that it's something with food, because it's a food response. Because I'll go in the enclosure, and it's not like I'm not aware. I know I've been known he's known to do this since the first couple weeks I had him. And I don't know what it is. I think it's something with like the shimmer in my eye and the way it's like when I like look, that quick movement. I think that's what he responds to, because I'll be in there and it always starts. Well, he'll be completely chilled out, laying on the basking spot. I see him over there. I like make note of him because I'm about to check out one of the other babies, and I want to make sure he's not gonna come flying towards me. And I'll look at him, and then I'll turn. And it's every time it's right after I look at him and I turn, and I think that's what gets him. Is I think it's the movement. So I've stopped doing that now. But he'll immediately, like within a half a second, he's coming at me full speed, full power, jumping right at my face, and he's like just fully trying to bite me. And so he latched onto me good. That's the first time. Before he had normally just jumped on my face. Sorry about
that. Was a bite. So no, that was a bite, not a claw.
Yeah, this was a bite. Yeah, he actually sliced me open pretty good, which is crazy too, because he's still young and like fairly small. Like he's not, I would not have expected him to cut me as bad as he actually did. But yeah, so now I wear safety glasses, because if he had bit me where he got me here, if I hadn't if I hadn't heard him kind of start coming to run and kind of reacted, he might have actually got my actual eyeball, and that's a whole different story if he actually gets my eyeball. I mean, I could lose my eye from that. So that's where I've started to kind of like, that's where I was saying I wear safety glasses now, because I'm like, okay, this is not worth it for this little dude. But
at least your lace monitors don't do it.
Yeah, if this guy tried to bite, no, he could probably kill me if he wanted to. So no. He's an actual sweetheart. He's like a puppy dog. But yeah, they're so personable. They each have their own. I also have a baby yellow tree that is obsessed with digging in my clothing. I literally can't open that enclosure without her. She'll sneak out while I'll be trying to change waters, and she'll literally come down the bottom. She'll sneak out and she'll go like under my hoodie, and she'll start crawling up inside my shirt. And I don't know what her deal is. But and then I've got another baby Bomi that likes to dig in my ears. He'll literally when he was younger, he doesn't do it now, thank God. But when he was younger, there was multiple times where I'd be doing stuff, and I'll just let him kind of like run around my shoulders and on my head and stuff while I'm working in the enclosure. And he'd literally run up to my ear, and he'd start tongue flicking like right in my ear. And then there was 1 or 2 times where I'd like kind of let him do it. I was like, that tickles. But then he'd stick his whole arm inside my ear like this, and he'd reach inside, and then I'd like, I'd kind of snatch him away. But it's just so funny because they're just so personable. It always makes me laugh how different they all can be. And that's what instances like that are what I'm talking about when I mean like you can really actually see how intelligent and curious they are when they're that tame, when they're not scared of you, and they want to just investigate everything. But it's fun when it's like it's fun and joyful when it's the ones that want to dig in your shirt. But I guess it isn't as fun when it's the ones that want to bite your eye.
Maybe your aftershave smells like dubia roaches or something. Maybe you need to change brands.
I know, right? Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm trying to get it under control because that when he's about a year's time, even now it's scary. So I mean, in a year he may
it hurts when
even though I can handle him, I may not handle him because he's evil. But he's also the prettiest one out of my clutch too. So it's
of course
kind of like it's like my favorite one. But
that's
funny
always the way. So going into the breeding in a bit more detail, what do you think are the triggers, or what do you use as triggers? Is it environmental triggers, or is it feed cycling, or
mainly food? Mainly food is what I'm using right now. Although even honestly recently, for my females that have like already produced a few clutches, it kind of seems to just be like on their time. I've kind of been noticing like if I've kind of noticed if I just keep them at like a really good weight, not like overweight, but like a little bit chunkier than the males per se, they'll kind of just they'll just go when the time's right. And I'll really increase food when I start to see them hanging, or when I first start to see the male take interest. But there are, when I am trying to like influence it, like if I am trying to do it on my own, or my female blue, for example, who I literally can't stop from cycling, she'll just go on her own. Like the clutch that I have hatching, I've got a clutch of blues hatching in the next couple weeks, and this clutch, when she laid it, I was in the middle of trying to give her a break from cycling. I was feeding her like a male. I was feeding her 4 to 6 dubia roaches every 4 to 5 days. I hadn't even given her one quail in like a month. Excuse me. But she was a solid weight. She was a good weight. She wasn't really, if anything, she was like leaner than normal. But I walk in one day, I walk in one day, and I think it was between feedings too. Like she hadn't even eaten in a few days, and I see her on the wall, and just instantly I was like, okay, she is 100% going into a cycle right now. So I literally immediately opened the tunnel, left, came back an hour later. They were locked on the wall. They stayed locked for like 24 hours straight, and then right when they unlocked, she went back up on the wall, like completely doubled in size. Stayed up there for 2 or 3 days, which is what I almost always see with ovulation. So she like almost immediately ovulated, and then she laid 24 days from those locks, which I thought was really interesting because that's the only instance that I've had where she laid that far away from 30 days. Almost every clutch I've had has been exactly like 29, 30, or 31 days from at least a day of locks. But with her, and the reason I think she laid so soon after is because it was late. It's because I paired them late versus because I wasn't expecting it, but and I wasn't really looking for it. But I never fed her heavy once, and she still just kicked into the cycle after a certain amount of time. And then I was feeding her. I was feeding her more like 6. I said 4 to 6 dubia. I was feeding her every 4 days, 3 to 4 days, but I was feeding her more like 6. I was feeding her more dubia. So now for the clutch that I just got from her a few weeks ago, for that clutch, I still had her in a deficit, same thing. And I actually got her up to 4 months this time. She went 4 months without laying any eggs, which is like the longest she's gone for a while because I just can't stop her. And then same thing. I walked in, I was like, she's hanging on the wall. I was like, I'm not going to stop her. So I just started feeding her heavy, and then she left with the male like a week later, and now got some eggs. But also for for females that are starting out, something that I've found that has worked really well for a lot of my wildcat girls that are for their first time clutch is doing a food deficit. It's like, but it's kind of interesting though, because how it starts is I'll start the deficit, or the times that it's worked, I'll start the deficit. I won't feed them for like a week, like exactly 7 days. But then those 7 days go by, and when I go to offer food on that seventh day, they don't want anything. And they just completely stick their nose up to it. So I'm like, okay, I try again the next day. They stick their nose up to it. And then every time they may eat like 1 or 2 dubia roaches after like 2 weeks have gone by. But then they pretty much either have only 1 or 2 small meals every 2 weeks for about a month. And then after that is when they kick into the cycle. So it's kind of like, I haven't done it yet where I've just stopped feeding them like on my own accord for a month. And I don't really know if I want to do that. But when they where'd Chris go? When they shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, that threw me off. But yeah. So when they go off of food, that's definitely something that is pointing towards them starting to gear up for a cycle, I've found. But a lot of the times that only works for that only seems to need to work for the wild caught females and the first time egg layers. For my wild caught girls that have laid eggs before, I haven't had to do that. But yeah, food is definitely a important.
Sorry, mate. Power cut. Typical.
No, you're good. No, you're totally good. But yeah. I basically just summed up saying, yeah, if you see them start coming off of or start going off of food, that seems to be a great indicator that they're getting ready to gear up for a cycle. But I don't know if you had heard this yet or if you had already lagged out, but I won't. I haven't done it yet to where I'll do it on my own accord, like where I won't feed them like by my choice for a month. It's always their choice, and I don't know if I want to do that, but I don't know. It was just very interesting to me because I was like the first time I saw it was my Bomi female that did it the first time, and when I saw it, when I like was seeing it, I was like, okay, this is weird. I was like, she is literally not eaten a scrap of food in like 15 days. I was like, I've never seen this before. But then she ate like 1 or 2 roaches, but then it was like another 15 days. But then it was it's literally like it happened with both her and my yellow tree female. And then right when they locked with the male, that same day, if they unlocked with the male, then I'd go in and offer food. If they didn't unlock with the male, then it'd be the next day. But the next chance I got to offer them food, they ate like crazy, right? That's when they then started slamming food immediately. So it's very interesting to me. But I'm gonna try some variations of that with these new Bomi females I have. So we'll see how it goes with them. But yeah.
Excellent. I missed most of that, and anyway, mate. So thanks for
sorry.
Going. No, you're good. You're
sorry.
good. I don't want you to repeat it. So hopefully, people know what's going on. We got Will Morrow's there. He's actually got some Bomi now, by the looks of things. They're getting around a bit now, which is nice. Like I said, for awesome. So many years they were just like unheard of, really. I think we'd had a few in Europe, so there's a good few of us working with them now. But they're really cool. They once you see one in the flesh, I think it's sort of changed your mind on the Bomi.
Man, that's what I try to tell everybody. And then I took one of my babies to the Reptile Super Show specifically for that reason. And there was not a single person that saw that saw her that was not like, oh my God, these look nothing like the photos. And I try to tell everybody that on my Instagram. I'm like, I don't think you guys understand. Like, for some reason, it's something with the color on the Bomi. The camera just can't pick it up. At least the iPhone camera. I don't know what it is, but it's like no matter what you do, like if you take a picture in the wrong lighting or just in any lighting, it almost seems like it like grays it out there where normally you see this bright shimmering gold, it makes it more like a dull pale yellow on the
for some
or
reason,
even just gray.
Yeah, I used to breed carpet pythons, which are obviously all black and yellow, and that they used to have the same thing used to happen with that. Something with yellow, it doesn't seem to pick it up as well. I'm sure you can edit it, but if you're just taking a snap on the phone, it doesn't seem to pick up the yellow. What color of yours, or what color did your Bomi come out? Were they sort of black and white when they come out, or did they come out yellow?
No, they came out yellow. I feel like I know what you're talking about with the black. Have you ever seen any over there in produced in Europe or in Indonesia that have had black and yellow spots like that, because mine were like bright golden, but I've seen there's a company that has these labels that has a picture of that says it's a baby Bomei, but I'm pretty sure it's a baby Bakari. I'm pretty certain it's a baby Bakari.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen any with any like white spots or anything like that have hatched
Yeah,
out?
yeah. So that
Really?
definitely
Okay.
is. Funnily enough, I hadn't seen a Beckerai that looked like that picture, and I've got like 4 of them outside now, which are Beckerai, but they're like almost golden sort of color now, and getting quite big with the golden color, which is weird. Which is what I think they've got confused with that image for some reason. I don't know if it's a different part of Aru they come from or something like that, because Aru's like many different islands. I'm sure the stock of what we've got in captivity come from different places, and some of them seem to hold the pattern for a lot longer. And like I said, the pattern's usually like a white to green sort of color. These ones are golden. But no, I was just interested because I've had 2 clutches here now, and then one of them they come out black and yellow or black and gold, and then we've got some that come out like black and white basically, and then they're going a bit more gold now.
Interesting. Send me some pictures of those if you get a chance, if you have any, because that's very interesting. I haven't seen that, because mine were about like just as bright gold. They were basically the exact same pattern as a baby blue tree when they first hatch out, just golden instead of blue.
Yeah.
But that as they've aged, it's kind of interesting to see the different patterns, because they for the most part they have the same, but there's some that have more of like a splatter of gold like all over their body, and then on the neck it's like really condensed. And like there's one baby, the baby that goes after my eye all the time, his neck is like solid gold. His neck and arms are like solid gold almost. He's probably the best one out of there. But then there's another one that has like bands of just like different, just a whole bunch of gold spots, sorry, gold spots, but like just kind of in bands kind of going around his body, which I think is really interesting. And then my adults have even different variations of pattern between them. It's very interesting to me. There's quite a bit of variation in just pattern between them, but sorry.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, that's what I see here. Are any of your adults black and like whitish, like a whitish yellow, not like a golden? So
I wouldn't really say so. No, you know what? Actually, now that you mention that, my younger female Bomei, this is the only time I've ever seen anything kind of close to what I think you're describing, which I thought was very unique about her. I actually completely forgot about this. Her arms are like silver. Her arms are like more of like a white color, but her back is kind of like a silver color. And but her back and her neck is like the most gold. I think it's the prettiest Bomei I've ever seen is between her and that baby I have. But maybe I'm a little biased, but her.
No, those babies you come out were stunning. They were really nice. Yeah, really good ones.
The one thing about that younger female too, she's got just like the most amount of orange on her neck that I've seen on any of them too. Which I'm a sucker for the orange on the Bomei. And so I thought my babies, because none of my babies hatched out with any orange, but their mom had a ton of orange. So I was hoping they would inherit that from her. And they didn't have any, but now that they're about 10 months old, there's 2 of them that are like for sure getting a lot of orange that's starting to come in on their throats. So I'm really excited to see how that comes in as they age, and on their belly too. But it's interesting to me that that's something that's coming in like later in life. But yeah, anyways, yeah, my younger female does have that like silver white color on her arms and her legs. And she's almost, I almost want to call her like my tricolor Bomei, because she literally has like a full 3 set of colors on her body. I'm trying to get her, she's very confident, so I'm trying to get her more comfortable with coming out onto me, because I want to lure her out onto my like, I have this like branch, this big kind of like mounted stick thing that I use to take pictures of with my big ring light. And I want to get her on there so I can get some actual photos, so I can really show people what I'm talking about. Because like right now it's like, I can't even, you can't see it in the photos. You can't quite tell.
Yeah.
But that's super interesting. I haven't seen many that have that white, but that's very cool to know that there are more out there that are like that.
I can misremember colors quite a lot. There's these tree shrews that go around over here, and I've been calling them black. I've been trying to find out what the species is, and they're like, there's no squirrel like thing that's black. And I seen one today. It's 100% brown. But no, with some We've got some really golden ones, but I'm sure we've got like some of the females. I'll take some photos tomorrow. They look almost xanthic. It's like a really silver gut, but that's all over the body, not just the arms. But
That's
like I said,
cool.
I could be misremembering because I walk around and see so many animals. Like I said, these screws are to go off. Something really interesting to talk about the breeding side of things and why I think the market for the tree monitors, everyone seems to think it's going down, but I think we've got a real good potential of this selective breeding because there's so much variance and stuff, and I think we could see another. We're like just at the infancy of breeding a lot of these species, and then when we start selective breeding, I've got some crazy yellow ones here, and then start breeding those together and try and get some really yellow ones. So I think it's quite exciting. Like I said, I think people thought that the bubble might have burst a bit on the tree monitors, especially in Europe, for example. I don't know what it's like in the States, but the prices in Europe seem to be dropping a little bit, and everyone's getting a bit worried about it, obviously having invested quite a bit of money into them.
I would say it's been pretty good here. It's not really necessarily going up. I'd say there's people that will drop their prices still, but there's still, I'd say the main breeders aren't really dropping there. Like me and Brian, we have the same prices all across the board from what I've seen, which I like, and we both stay firm on it, which I also really like because I'd rather sit on an animal for 5 months that I know is worth what it is than like try to just, okay, I'll go $1,000 off just to try to move it in 2 weeks. It's like, it's also like, I'm not trying to just offload it to anybody. Like there's been multiple instances where I've turned people down that are like inquiring to buy just because it's like, if you're trying to buy from me and you're telling me how you're setting up and I'm actively telling you like, no, you can't do that. Like that's not going to work out. And then you're like, no, yeah, it will. The internet's saying it will. Then I'm not going to sell to you. Cause like, it's like, I'm not, the number one thing that I try to really do is make sure these babies go to the right home, go to a good home. So, I mean, I'll just keep them all if I have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But obviously I don't have to, because there's tons of good keepers out there now. And now that, thanks to people that do the podcast like you and MJ doing all these podcasts, there's been a lot more valuable information that has gotten out to the right people that are trying to keep these. I mean, almost every customer that's done business with me has watched one of these podcasts and gotten tons of information from it, which that's why I love coming on here and doing these, because it's so beneficial to just the hobby as a whole. And the tree monitors.
Nobody reads back in when I got into it, everyone was reading books, but nobody reads books. So this is the that way it's more fun as well. doing
for sure. Yeah.
Don't know, just to end on I guess you explained most of the breeding while I had that power cut. If you go into egg incubation, I think you're using the Sims method, which I haven't had any success with when it comes to monitors, but you seem to be doing pretty well with that.
Yeah, I see a lot of differing opinions on the Sims and stuff, and I almost kind of wonder if it kind of depends where you're at in the world, or just how your climate in your incubator, or just in whatever room your incubator is. Because I, on the contrary, haven't had any success using like substrate for my eggs. The one time I did it, my clutch of 9 blues, the 9 eggs, it would have been a full 9 babies. Only 8 of them made it, because on day 110, I had one of the eggs burst. And I'm pretty certain the only reason it burst is there was a period at the start of the incubation. I had them in there for about a week, and there was 3 or 4 of them backtrack. There was 3 or 4 of them in the substrate when she first laid all 9 that were like pretty dented, and I thought they were duds, but I just always incubate until there's no debate. And they bounced back almost immediately. But then some of the other ones that weren't dented started to dent. So I put them all just in perlite, and I did it by weight. I did 50% perlite, sorry, not 50%, 1-to-1 ratio by weight of water and perlite. And then I kept them in there, and they all bounced back within like a week or 2. And normally what I do, so typically if I have eggs that are denting, if they're denting, when they first start denting, I use sphagnum moss. If 3 or 4 days goes by and there's been no change in the dent, or there's still a dent, if there's still a dent, I'll leave them. If the dent has been filling out, but there's still a little bit, I'll leave them in the moss. But if the dent is like still just as bad as it was before, I'll actually move them from the sim into the actual substrate. And every time I've done that, it has worked perfectly in bouncing them back. And then I'll just move them back from the perlite back into the sim container. But with the 9 blue tree eggs, I actually didn't move them back into the sim container until like 45 days later. And the only reason I moved them back, because I was like, oh, I'll just try incubating them in the perlite since it works so well bouncing them back. But I went in there one night. I always check them just through the glass door, like every morning and night. And I looked through the glass door, and I could see a little bead of sweat coming out of one of them, and I was like, "Oh crap!" So I instantly went in there, wiped it down, pulled them all out, and then it was like 60 days later. It was that exact same egg that had that little bit of sweat, and it sweat for a couple days after as well. And I just kept going in there and wiping it. But it was that egg that ended up bursting. So I'm pretty sure it was from, I just left them in the substrate too long and it took on too much water. But yeah, all the others did fine. I mean, it also could be that maybe I just need to lower the ratio of water in the perlite mix, and I'm sure it would work just as well too.
It goes back to what you were saying. Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that the sim container method does work perfectly for me so far, though.
Yeah,
but
it goes back to what you were saying before. In the UK, I could use 1.1 perlite to water all day long. Come to Indonesia, and now I use less than half water, just because of how humid it is here. So it's really difficult to explain. I get the question a lot of what to do, but you really have to sort of make. Unfortunately, a few of the first clutches you might have, you have to maybe try different methods or sacrifice some eggs. Interestingly, if you start using perlite quite a bit, you can move the eggs around the actual box, so towards the sides of the incubation tub, whatever you want to call it. It'll be wetter. So if you get a dimpled egg and you're incubating them in the middle, you can sort of move them to the outside and then move them back. I found with the Sims, I love Sims for Python eggs. I've hatched loads of Python eggs in Sims. It's super easy, never had a problem. In the UK, the ones I tried actually dented in, which I thought was bizarre because it should be 100% humidity in there. It's got loads of water, but yeah, they never filled out. So I had to put them, a bit like you were saying, put them into perlite, and then I've been doing perlite for monitor eggs forever. So I was like, oh, I won't even bother. But I do like the Sims because it works so well for Pythons. It just, like I said, for me, it didn't work. So yeah, I think people just need to see what works for them, where they are.
For sure. Yeah, no. Yeah, I think sometimes just having that direct contact with the damp, moist substrate that just allows for them to take on the most amount of water if they need more. That's why I'll tell people like the moss works. Yeah. The moss does work great, but if I definitely have found that sticking them straight in the perlite, just kind of like burying them in there, that has worked if I've got some like eggs that are denting pretty seriously. I've saved quite a lot of eggs that are, because I see some people talking about like, oh, if the egg is dented when you first find it, it's like almost always bad. I have found probably 5 or 6 different eggs now that have been fully dented when I'm finding them. Not, I mean, there is like a limit. Like if it's like if it's like smushed completely, it's dead. Like you get now. I have an eye for it for sure. Like there was some just now in my blue females clutch. There was 3 of them that I was like, okay, if it looks where it's like almost like somebody pinched it like this, that's not what I'm really referencing. I'm more referencing if it's like it still has that cylindrical. Yeah, it's just like it's almost like a football that's out of air, or like a basketball that's out of air, instead of it being like kind of smushed flat. But I've had several eggs that I've saved either using the moss or a lot of the time using that perlite, and they bounce right back. But that's why I always incubate till there's no debate.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I would say.
Sorry, Pug, did you get into nesting before, just going back a step, or not? What are you using for?
Oh, sorry, cut out right there. One more time. Sorry.
That's right. What do you use for? I don't know if you spoke about it when I was off. Did you talk about nesting at all?
The nest box. Sorry. The audio kind of cut out. My bad. Yeah, nest box. No, I haven't yet. I'm still trying to. I think I had texted you about this. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what works best for some of my girls. But for the most part, most of them have laid in. I'll just use 7-gallon totes from Home Depot. They're just like black totes with yellow lids, and then I'll wrap. I get 2 of them. Excuse me. I wrap the one on the inside with heat cable, like all the way down the sides, and then I stick it inside the other one to kind of trap in the heat and offer a protective layer against it, so the laser doesn't brush up against the heat cable and burn itself. And then and then on the lid, actually, this is different than what most people do. Most people put the heat pack on the bottom. I like to put the heat pack on the top of the lay box, actually, because I've talked to me and Cody Kopp is the one who really I talked to that told me about this idea, because he was telling me about how the tree monitors will go down and they'll probe with their nose and like use it as like a temperature gauge almost to find where they want to lay their eggs, which is exactly what I see all of mine do every time they're getting ready to lay. Is they use their nose and they kind of like they feel around with their nose, and so to me it makes the most sense for the. Obviously, there's like no information on what they actually lay on in the wild, but I would assume whatever it is probably going to be heated by the sun. So I would imagine it's probably heated top down, which is why I try to then in captivity replicate by heating top down. And it works great for majority of my girls. There's a couple that are picky. My Cordensis female, the first time she just scattered them across the enclosure. The second time she went under the lay box, which ended up actually working out the way I do the heat cable, because it was like 82 degrees where she laid them, and those are the babies that I have sitting downstairs now, so that works. But I would like her to go inside the actual lay box. But yeah, I want to try what you guys do with those like bamboo sticks or the like logs you use. Those are really cool. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. They didn't. It's funny. Like, it created so much attention. I definitely can't take credit for it. I think it was Peter Falsham and the owner here that come up with it. It works amazing outdoors, but so far indoors they've gone back and they've got both indoors. So they got those bamboo tubes and literally what you're describing. Unfortunately, we've got some old heat mats and they have to go underneath. But I'd much prefer them to be on top or on the side. Like you said, I think it's way more natural for them to dig down and get away from the heat rather than dig towards the heat. So if it doesn't start working with the heat mats underneath, I'll find a way of getting these. Just because the heat mats are too big for the box, so it'd be sticking out basically. But I will figure some out to get it on the side. I much prefer it on the side. But yeah, the clutches we've had indoors so far, they've used that and they've got the bamboo. I think they use the bamboo outside because obviously that is completely natural. There's no heat mats or anything, and the bamboo heats up a lot quicker. So if you imagine the also outside, we've got the boxes like we use inside, like you're explaining, but without a heat mat. But that's like a big mass of dirt to heat up. So if it hasn't been hot in the day, if it's cold for a couple of days, it just gets really cold. Where the bamboo, if the sun comes up in the morning, or you know, as it gets dark, it heats up a lot quicker. So I think that's the only reason they're using it. It'll be interesting to see when we've got so many of them inside, we'll be able to tell which one's better. I think it was Matthew just had one though, which completely contradicts. This is why this reptile keeping's hard. He just put one of those like bamboo tubes inside and had a nest box, and she chose the tube. So who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, I like offering. Yeah, no, yeah, that's funny. I like offering variety like that because I've with my original Bomei female that when she laid her clutch, I actually originally I had her nest box as an arboreal nest box, and it was like on the outside of the enclosure, and I had it made out of PVC, and I had it wrapped with heat cable. But she was digging in there originally, and then I can't remember why I decided to. I think I just wanted to try it, but I ended up putting the same tub method that I had in my yellow tree monitor females enclosure at the time. And I was like, let me just put it in there and see if she likes it. Sure enough, I put it in there, even though she had a full nest already dug in the arboreal one. The second I put that lower one in the bottom of the enclosure in there, she went right down into it and just used that. And then it was literally the next day, I put it in there at night. The next day she wakes up, she's kind of hanging around during the day. About midway through the day, she goes down, she finds the lay box, she goes inside, didn't come out for 24 hours until she laid the eggs. So it's actually, she must have really liked that one lay box. But then the Cordensis female doesn't like it. The blue female, though, uses it every time, no problem. And then the yellow female, she used it the very first time, no problem whatsoever. Then the second time, for some reason, she didn't want to use it. So I don't know why, but
that's getting them to breed. I don't think's too bad, especially once you've got them going once. But nesting seems to, like all of us that are doing it in sort of any sort of scale, it like twists all of us around. Like no one's said that's exactly what they want, and it does seem to be down to the individual. So yeah,
Yep.
it's that's the biggest headache I find with breeding them is the nesting for sure.
For sure. Another thing that I've found that really helped me and that saved that second clutch for my yellow female, the only reason I got them all safe and sound is she was digging around in this one. She had a couple different places in the bottom of the enclosure that she was digging, but there was one place specifically right next to one of these branches that she was just always, she had a big old hole dug out, and I always saw her down there. So I ended up just going in there and I just took out all the substrate that was there and I replaced it with just straight sand and eco earth. And then I coiled up a heat cable at the bottom of that. And I kind of like, I have like this garden liner in all my enclosures that kind of separates the substrate from the bottom. And I just put the heat cable under that garden liner and it worked perfectly. She laid them right in there. They were right at 84 degrees. And so that kind of just being adaptive to what their needs are. I mean, even for each specific clutch seems to be the most beneficial for sure.
Yeah, I think if you can just provide until they change even. So like I've had them laying in the same nest box and then like give up and they've like had like 4 clutches in the same nest box. So I think you've got to just provide options for them. Even when you seem to get it sorted, it's not the case. They're super picky when it comes to nesting. Yeah,
they are. They're interesting. It's always I'm always still, especially with nesting. Nesting is definitely the thing I have figured out the least. I would say it is tricky for some of them, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that happens weekly. You have to wait for that clutch, wait for it to happen, then
exactly
wait for another one. So it's
and you have to just hope what you set up was perfect. You only have like a few days to like make adjustments too, because they're getting ready to lay. You don't want to start messing around too many things. It's a lot of the times once it starts getting to like a certain point, I'll just stop messing with things because I'm like, I don't want to, like, I'm like starting to think to myself, maybe the only reason she's not laying them yet is because I keep going in there and trying to change things for her. So I'm like, whatever. If she drops them, she drops them. If they're fertile, I'll get. That's why I watch the cameras so intently too. That's another reason they're so nice. It's like if she's dropping them just some place random, I'll get to them within an hour and hopefully they're good.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah,
it's worth. Oftentimes the scattered ones don't go full term, or sometimes you have problems. I had a few scattered ones. It's like I said, like you were saying, it's worth incubating them and seeing how they go. But often the best babies I've had are the ones that have been sort of nested properly. It does seem to start right at that first stage of getting that properly to get really healthy babies out.
Yep. Even like same with what you said. I've never had a female that's scattered, or I've never had a clutch that's of scattered eggs where any of the eggs have made it at all whatsoever. I even had, normally it's not that they're even it's not like there's something wrong with them. They're just always infertile. I think they know when they have fertile eggs versus infertile because they also act. So even, for example, my blue female, I've always thought this is interesting. The times she's laid dud clutches, she is in and out of her lay box within 3 or 4 hours. But when she lays a fertile clutch, she's in there for minimum 24 hours. So it seems that she really takes her time when they're fertile, and like regardless of the amount of eggs too. And I think that's what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. Shoot. Sorry, but yeah. It's really interesting how different their nesting habits can be, even just between different clutches of the same female. It's crazy. But
we did skim over it, Parker. That like Dan saying there, that 9 egg clutch is the biggest I've heard out of any tree monitor from your McRae.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprising clutch. What's interesting too is like, even when she lays those size of clutches, like I genuinely think she can lay more than 9 too. Like I think one of these times she might even pop out 10, because the difference between her, even though she's the one out of all my other girls, the largest clutch I've had out of any of my other females is 4. It seems to be 4 is like my sweet spot. A lot of the girls lay exactly 4 eggs every time. But I'll have every other girl, they lay 4 eggs. Their hip bones are still sunken in. They're all lethargic. They look all skinny for like a few weeks after laying 4 eggs. My blue female will literally dropped those 9 eggs. 2 days later, you couldn't even tell she'd laid eggs. Literally 2 days. Like she immediately fills back out. She also is almost never lethargic right after. She'll lay the eggs and then she'll like go sleep for like an hour or 2. But then she's immediately like, I'll go like eat breakfast or something, come back. She's scratching at the door all crazy looking for food. Whereas like the other girls are just sleeping. They'll go crazy for the food, but they'll kind of just like lounge around, they're kind of not under the weather, but they're not like their normal selves for at least like I'd say like a week, but she is just unfazed. She does not care, and she's laying twice as many eggs as any of these other girls. But it's like she's
a pro.
unfazed. Yeah, she's a pro for real. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see her future clutches for sure. I really hope I can hold back another female that's like her. This really big baby that I have in my holdbacks right now. Still too early, way too early to tell because she's only 5 months old. But I feel like head shape to me is leaning more female. But I'm also might just be optimistic. But I really do hope I get another female that's just like her, because she is definitely one of a kind. Excuse me. But
yeah, definitely, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I will wrap up on Will's questions. That's what I wanted to wrap up. But before that, you are working with obviously a few other species of monitors. Obviously, the lace monitors behind. Want to go into some of your other projects that you're working with, or ones you're hoping to breed?
Yeah, I also one of the other main projects I'm working with is Lanthanotis, which actually my adult pair is what's in this enclosure right here, this 4x2x2, and that's my adult pair, and they only recently have come of age, probably within the last, like, I guess not that recently, probably within like the last 6 months or so, 6 to 8 months. But yeah, I hope to really start seeing some action out of them. I'm starting to really kind of try to figure them out. I kind of haven't been. There's a lot of things that I know about them where it's like I've heard warmer temperatures seem to trigger breeding, and I haven't really tried that. I actually, a few days ago, I only just now turned the water temp up to 81. So I heard 81. Rumor has it 81 is some sweet spot, I heard. So I'm trying that out. But you guys, I know, have had a lot of success with Lanthanotis. There in Prestasi, right?
I want to. Yeah. We do really well with them. I don't have that much to do with them because they just seem to do their own thing. Interesting what you say. Ours obviously aren't heated at all. So ours are getting like a proper season. But all the eggs come in the dry season when it is obviously warmer. So that is interesting. But yeah, I literally just incubate the eggs for those. The guys come and bring them to me, and we feed them worms. So
that's everyone. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't make it go.
No, you're good. Peter Falsham is obviously a partner with the farm and does really well with them. I'm trying to get him back on to do a podcast. He's actually doing them, as most other people would. So I'll try to get him on to do that, as in indoors. But yeah, you can't really go on ours because ours are all paired up, and then they just get a season and we get eggs. They seem pretty simple.
Like every person that I've talked to that breeds Lanthanotis, like almost exactly says that. They're like, I wish I could give you some pointers, but they just do their own thing. I'm like, well, why aren't mine doing their own thing then? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But I think that's because they're younger. Because I've like 90% of the information I even have on Lanthos is from Peter Falsham, actually, and the different things he's shared in a lot of the group chats. But I think it was him that said something. I remember I've seen several people say that they don't think they really mature until around 3 years old, which I 100% would say is true, because I had a male who I knew was 2 years old, and he was like half the size of the. Oh shoot! No, just died. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can still hear me. Oh, okay. One of my headphones died, so I thought they both died. But let me pop that one in. Sorry about that. Anyways,
good.
Lost my train of thought. Lanthanotis. Oh yeah. So I'm pretty sure that the only reason I haven't had any success yet with them is either A, because I haven't really turned up water temp. I've been keeping them around 78 degrees, and I had been letting the air temperature get a little bit warmer, but I had never turned the water temp up to like the 80s until just a few days ago. So we'll see if that gets me some luck. But I think the main reason is because my male wasn't of age yet, because he was half the size of the female until about 6 to 8 months ago, and now he's bigger than the female for sure. So I think they definitely mature closer to like 3.5 years, which is interesting to me. But
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, like I said, they're super productive here, and Pete's done really well with them. So I'm sure you'll crack them in the end. They're very cool.
Thank you. Yeah,
sweet with all the technical difficulties we have. Oh, but what other species have you got? You got the Lacey's, the Lanthanotis.
Yeah, Lacey's, and then pretty much other than that, I have some other like miscellaneous reptiles, but most of them are just like pets. This on the floor over here is my legless lizard. That's kind of like the most out there one I have, but I love her. And then I've got a bunch of green iguanas too. I love green iguanas. Green iguanas were when I first started getting into reptiles, that was originally what I was going to work with. I wanted to work with tree monitors more than I wanted to work with iguanas, but I just had no idea where to even start to get tree monitors, especially back then. Yeah, so I've got a albino green iguana, normal green iguana, blue green iguana. I got a green basilisk, bearded dragons too. I have 2 bearded dragons. Those guys are literally my children. I love bearded dragons so much. everybody sleeps on bearded dragons, but even with everything that I keep, bearded dragons are still probably one of my top 5 species out there. If you want to, they're so, I love them. I don't know. It just, maybe I'm kind of just biased towards mine, I guess. Like if it's not my 2, I don't really want any. But yeah, I love my 2. They were the first reptiles I ever owned, so I think that's probably a big reason too. But yeah, pretty much that. I've kind of consolidated a lot this last year, as I've been producing more tree monitors, just because I've really needed the space for a lot of the reason. I had shinnies at one point. I sold my pair of shinnies. Kind of missed them, but it was the right thing to do. I had turtles too. I got so sick of doing water changes, and I was like, I don't have space for a giant pond right now, so I'd sell them too. But yeah, I'm mainly just dialed in on the land, or on the not the land, sorry, the tree monitors, the landfills, and then now the lacies too. I absolutely love the lace monitors. I knew I would enjoy them, but I enjoy them even more than I thought I would. They're so much different than the tree monitors, but they're so much fun. I love them.
Yeah,
they are a blast.
Is it both Bell's phase you got?
Yeah, Bell's phase. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. That's
Very
my
nice.
That's my male right there. My male is a bit more of a dirty bell. My female's she's really clean. So I'm hoping to get some nice clean babies from them this year. My female's actually, she produced a clutch for the guy who had them before me. So she's already produced, but I've only had them for a month and a half now, roughly somewhere around there, month and a half. So they're fairly new to me still, but yeah, they're doing great. I'm probably going to pair them here fairly soon, actually. So fingers crossed things go well.
I can't be as bad as the true ones. I think laces are pretty good. I still can't believe they're in the hobby, like especially Bell's phase ones. I remember like the first one I seen in Australia Zoo was like early 2000s. I was just like, that's like, I'm never going to see that in captivity. It was just amazing to see one there, and then to see them all now is just incredible. And the amount of people working with them.
They're special, man. They are. I love them. I'm very glad I decided to get some. I'd been like, I don't know if I want to do any big monitors for a while. And then I got the opportunity for these guys. And I was like, I gotta jump on it. I have to.
Slippery slope. You got to get the giant tree monitor. You got to get the crocodile monitor next.
That is the next. I want croc monitors so bad, but I want to do it right. I want to get captive bred babies, and I would love to if I could set aside a nice 6x4 by like 10 foot imprint of a room somewhere right now. I'd definitely get some, but that'll probably have to wait until I get my facility that I'm working towards. So
excellent.
But one day, absolutely, I will have some croc monitors.
Excellent. I'll get to Will's question. If you guys had to pick one species of tree monitors, obviously he was talking about then, what are you keeping?
Bomi-eye for me personally, all day, every day. Bomi-eye all day. I love Bomi-eye. Bomi-eye are probably my favorite like animals in the world. I love them. But you can't go wrong with any species of tree monitor for sure. My second favorite is for sure yellows. For sure yellows.
I was going to say, what's your list?
Yeah, my list. I would agree with you when you were talking about blues. Blues are probably my least favorite too. I'm not the biggest. I love blues. I love them. Their colors are awesome and everything. Maybe not my least favorite. Yeah, actually no. Let me change that. I wouldn't say least favorite, but it's hard to even say like a least favorite tree monitor because it's not like I don't walk in there and I'm like, oh.
Because nobody wants to pick the worst one because there literally isn't the worst one. Just give me your top 3 then. So Bomi, Rising Eye.
Top three Bomi, Rising Eye for sure, and then if we're talking specifically Maruki prasinus, I'm going Maruki prasinus. If we're
Nice.
talking species overall, hopefully those are a species of their own soon. But if we're talking overall, Cordensis. I have to go Cordensis for my third. I love Cordensis, but yeah, but a nice pretty Maruki is hard to beat for sure, I would say.
Yeah, even a nice strong prasinus. I argue with Brian all the time because I love them. Right? He's like, Chris, you can't really beat a nice sarong with a blue back prasinus. I was like, and he's got a point. You know what I mean, it's difficult.
He does. I think people get too used to it because it's the most common tree monitor you see. So it's like, oh, that's just the normal, that's the basic. But it's like that is. I also am guilty of that sometimes, where I walk in there and I like walk by my sarong female. I'm like, I have to do a double take. I'm like, whoa, like you are gorgeous. If I really just sit and like look at you, but yeah,
mine would be Risingrai, Bomai, and then probably prasinus for my ones.
Solid list. Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that's perfect.
Mine changes every. Risingrai are always at the top. I just love the yellows, but I walk around here and it changes every week anyway. So don't hold me to it. But yeah,
totally agree too. Yeah.
My favorites are the yellows. Excellent. Thank you very much for coming on, Parker. What's the future for Parker's Park? And just put out your socials and your plugs.
Mainly my Instagram is what I'm most active on. I'm hoping to really start getting a lot more active with actual posts. I post a lot on my story, but I'm gonna get a lot better about actual posts this year. Hopefully I'm gonna start a YouTube channel sometime soon. So stay tuned for that. But also my MORPH Market store is Parker's Park. You can go check me out on there or shoot me a DM on Instagram if you have any questions. I currently have Cordensis tree monitor babies, US captive bred babies available. I also have one US CBB yellow tree monitor baby available. It's the last one from my most recent clutch. And then I'll have, so if you're located in Arizona, I can only sell within Arizona, but for the blues, all the other species are good, but for blue tree monitors, I'll have some of those later this month. And if you're located in Arizona only, shoot me a DM. And this year I hope to really I'll hope to continue producing the 4 species I'm currently producing, but I also hope to add Maruki prasinus and hopefully some Bakari, so that I can check off breeding all 6 species, which would be a dream come true. But thanks for having me on, man. I really love coming on these. It's always a lot of fun.
Excellent, mate. No, it's been a really good podcast. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you can like, comment, subscribe and all that, because I always forget to say all that sort of stuff and it helps. Big thanks to obviously MJ and the Trap Talk Reptile Network. We're going to leave it there. Cheers, guys.